Welcome to Photoshop Chapter 2 Working with Layers Part 2. We're going to take a look at a few odds and ends before we move on with blending modes. And the things that I want to start with today are, first of all, let's talk about duplicate layers. In the last Part 1, we talked about how to make a selection into its own layer. So just going to open up the Layers panel here. And I've got my birds here and I've made a selection of them, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit my control key and click my alpha channel that I saved them as to reselect that. And I'm going to go back to layers. Now I can go to layer, I can go new layer via copy or via cut, and if you recall, if I go via copy, it makes a new layer of just those birds, but it also leaves them on that background layer. Now I've got a layer with just the birds on it, but my birds also stayed in my background layer because I used the layer via copy command. However, my birds are selected. I go layer, new layer via cut, and it's basically going to give me a layer with my birds on it just like before. However, take a look at that background layer. What happened? Basically, it cut the pixels out of that background layer. Layer via copy copies the pixels to another layer. Layer via cut cuts them out of the layer you're on and puts them on a new layer. I've got my background layer. I want to make a duplicate layer. I can just drag this layer onto the Create New, and it makes a background copy, as you can see. I've got my original background and now a background copy. I'm going to go back to background because from the Layers panel menu, I can click Duplicate Layer. It's going to pop up the Duplicate Layer dialog box, and I can name it whatever I like and click OK. And now this one's called Background Copy 2. That's another way. I'm going to go back to my background layer. The third way is with nothing selected. I can just click layer, new, layer via copy, and it will copy the whole thing. Again, this is going to be called background copy 3 because this is the third time that I've copied that background. So there are 3 ways to duplicate my layers. Right now I have 3 files open. What if I want to view them all at the same time? Well, in CS5 there's actually a button up top that you can use. But since I'm working in Creative Cloud, I can go to Window, I can go to Arrange, and then I can choose however, and it's called the In-Up Views, by the way. And I can choose 2 up, 3 up horizontal, I can do 3 up stack. I can choose whatever I like. 3 up horizontal, 3 up stacked, and it gives you a little picture of what that will look like. So let me go with the 3 up horizontal. There you go. I can change that arrangement and go to 3 up stacked. I can tile them, float them in the window, float all in windows. If I did that, they're all 3 going to be in a separate window. In-Up Views is under Window Arrange. And again, as I said before, in CS5, there is a button up top here that allows you to arrange them that way. Next, I want to talk about the Layer Edges command. So what I want to talk about is, what if I want to be able to show the layer boundaries? For example, I feathered my fish here, and if I take a look at my layers, you can see I selected the fish and I modified it and feathered it. Now I want to move that fish over to my bird's photo. So I'm just going to grab my fish and drag it over and drop it there. Now, there it is on the layer, and I'm going to hide that background copy that's on top so you can see it. I just want to move it down a little bit. Now, you see those? I'm going to blow this up. You can see the edges there where I feathered the fish. And but what if I need to really see the layer edges very well so that I can show the true boundaries so I can really work with this object? Well, I can simply go to View, Show, and then find my layer edges. And now it's going to show me where those edges truly are for my fish. And in fact, what it's showing me is, hey, there's a whole background out here that this fish is cut out of. So that would be something that would be helpful to me. And I simply just want to View, Show, Layer Edges. Next, I want to talk about the defringe command. Defringe is a simple command because by default Photoshop selection tools apply anti-aliasing to blend the edges of a selection with the surrounding color. So at the border of a selection, anti-aliasing adds pixels with colors that blend with the selected area and the pixels outside that area. But if you later reselect an area with edge pixels that blend between two colors, those blended pixels, called a fringe, will be visible when you move the pixels to a different colored background. So, when you move a selection to a new layer, you can fix a fringe of pixels by using the defringe command. You can clearly see this fringing area here, and I want to blend that in a little better. So I go to Layer, Matting, Defringe, and I'm just going to go with 1 pixel and click OK. And you see how it tried to smooth that area, that fringing area over, because the defringe command colors the outer pixels with colors from deeper within the selection, replacing any fringe color. So it went inside deeper into that selection and said, we're going to paint over that fringe color with a little yellow from further inside this selection. Now obviously that's not going to work here for blending. We can do some other things here, but clearly you get the gist of defringe. Next, let's take a look at transforming layers with the free transform tool. Right now I want to be on the fish layer because we're going to transform that layer a little bit. Now remember, with the free transform command, the transform command is a destructive tool. In other words, what happens to it is a permanent change to your photos. So you want to be careful with it. Plus, the free transform command, if you're going to perform multiple transformations, you should do them all at once, because each transformation is going to introduce a bit of distortion. First, we're going to select the content that we want to transform. So I'm just going to choose the layer because it's that fish that I want to transform. I can also use a selection tool to select the area that I want to transform. Either way, right now I just use my layers panel. Next, I'm going to edit and free transform. Click, and it puts a box around the item that I'm going to transform. The handles appear around the edges, and that's how I'm going to work it. The transform registration point appears in the center right here. The transform registration point determines the point around which any transformation occurs. If I want, I can drag the transform registration point to the desired location within the transform borders, so I can move this point anywhere I wish. I'm just going to leave mine in the center, which is fine with me. To move this item, I'm going to drag from within here, so I can just pick it up and drag it anywhere I wish. To scale it, I'm going to go to the handles and get that double-sided straight arrow, and I'm just going to drag in or out. Now notice how when I did that, look how the fish that's not proportional. If I want it to remain proportional, then I'm going to hold my shift key down and then drag, and it will keep that fish in proportion. or that image in proportion. To rotate it, I'm just going to go to one of the outside handles and get that double bendy arrow, I call it, and I can rotate all the way around however I want, and I'm going to leave it just like that. If I want to skew it, I'm going to hold Control down and drag any one of the handles that I wish. Okay, you can see how that works out. And finally, to create a perspective effect, I'm going to press Control, Alt, and Shift and drag a transform handle. So I've got those buttons pressed. Now let me see how that works out for me. And then I can choose another one, and then I can let go. I'm going to move that up so I can see my strange looking fish now. When I want to apply the transformation, I just simply hit enter, or if I want to get out of that and not accept the changes, I'm going to press escape, which I'm going to do. What about aligning objects on different layers? Well, I have this picture of a round window, and I also have this picture of a round hay bale. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly grab the elliptical marquee tool. And okay, now I have my selection made. I want to drag this selection into my round window file. So I'm just going to get my arrangement where I can have both my photos side by side. I like that. I'm going to grab my hay bale that I've selected, and I'm going to come over and drop it on my window. There it is. Now I need to go to my layers panel, and I need to select both my layers. I can hold down my shift key and click on the link icon to link those layers together. Now once they're linked together, all I have to do is align them. I have my hay bale and my window all in one file. I've linked them together, but now I want to select the layer that I want everything to be aligned to, which is the window. I want my hay bale aligned to my window. So I'm going to select my window, and I'm going to go to Layer, Align, Vertical Centers, just to make sure those are lined up perfectly. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to go to Horizontal Centers, and that moves the horizontal centers so that they are perfectly aligned. So now that my vertical and my horizontal are both aligned, and now my layers are aligned perfectly. This is aligning objects that are present on different layers. It's that simple. So that wraps up part 2 of working with layers.